Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Tuesday. We're a couple of days away now from Arsenal returning to action. It's Europa League on Thursday. Arsenal heading north of the Arctic Circle to take on Bodo in Norway. Not going to be an easy trip or game, that one. Bodo very, very strong at home no matter who they come up against. Difficult conditions for any visiting team. AstroTurf pitch. I think they've won their last 15 games in a row in European competitions or something like that. You know, hammered Mourinho's Roma 6-1 last season. So it's not going to be an easy game whatsoever, that one. I know people will probably look at it and look at the name and think this is going to be a pushover for Arsenal. It is not. It's going to be a difficult match indeed. And team selection is going to be very, very interesting. So I'm going to start today's video on that, looking at who could play in that one, who should play. And there's some big decisions, I think, for Mikel. I mean, we saw the changes he made last week for the game at the Emirates, which Arsenal won 3-0. I mean, he made 8 changes from that one. He kept 3 players who had started the game against Spurs, and that was Martinelli, Gabriel and Xhaka. They all played against Spurs, they all played against Bodo, they all played against Liverpool. So you look at those 3 who have pretty much, I think they've all started every single game this season, those 3. And you look at that and think they can't surely start this Thursday as well. I mean, Arsenal got Leeds on Sunday, fairly early kickoff, 2 o'clock, so it's not the 4:30 kickoff. So Arsenal are going to have to get back from the Arctic Circle, playing on Thursday night. You're going to have no preparation time. They're going to have to go all the way up to Leeds on a coach or train or plane, however they're going to do it. Mikel's really going to have to balance things out with this one, I think, in terms of his team selection. And you look at those 3 players who've just started all of the games. And yes, they've all got good engines. They're all durable. But you've got to give them a rest at some point. I feel like those 3 have to be given a bit of an eye off. I wonder if Mikel, for the first time in this Europa League competition, is going to actually leave quite a lot of players at home and think about that Leeds game on Sunday. Because even if players don't start and they're on the subs bench, they're still going to have the whole sort of trauma is probably the wrong word, but the physical strain of having to actually fly over to Norway, sitting in an aeroplane, albeit it's going to be a lot nicer than the aeroplanes that me and you would sit on if we went over to Norway. But still, they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to come home. They're going to have no sleep on the Thursday night, get back in the early hours. It's just not ideal preparation for that Premier League game. So I do wonder if this is the first game we're really going to see Mikel make quite a lot of changes in terms of the team selection, but also in terms of the squad selection by leaving some of the real star names at home to give them a bit of a proper rest and keep them refreshed ahead of that game against Leeds. I mean, it's a balancing act and it's a difficult one because Arsenal aren't through in the Europa League by any means. Yes, they're top of the group. They've only played 2 games. They've won both of them. But still, you don't want to give away that advantage because it's really important that you top the group. Because before, a couple of years previously, last time Arsenal had competition, if you got through, it didn't really matter if you went through first or second. I mean, there was a little bit of an advantage in terms of being one of the sort of seeded teams for the first knockout stage in terms of the draw and having the second game at home. But this is really important because if you win the group this time out, you get a bye into the last 16. You don't have to play in the round of 32. So you basically, that's 2 extra games you don't have to play. You can just sit back and rest for 2 Thursdays in a row while you watch the other teams compete in the last 32 stage. So it's a really big advantage to top the group, and Arsenal don't want to give that away. They've still got the 2 back-to-back games against PSV to come as well, and going to Holland's not going to be easy. So you want to get as many points on the board as possible early doors. So this isn't a game on Thursday night you want to just think, what, it doesn't matter. We're just going to play whoever we play, hopefully get the result. He's going to have to balance things up very, very well. And I mean, this is the demands of having European football. Didn't have to worry about that last season. You do this season, so you have to manage it well. So going to be intriguing. But I think, players like Kieran Tierney, you'd think he's certainly going to start. Tierney's actually a really interesting one because Tomiyasu obviously came in and played brilliantly against Liverpool at left back, but there was very much a tactical decision. It was up against Salah, brilliant one-on-one defender, right-footed, so he can deal with Salah when he cuts inside on his left foot. Going to be really intriguing to see if that's what Arteta's got planned long-term as sort of first-choice backup for Zinchenko, or if for Leeds he's going to go back and he's going to play Tierney at left-back, and and it's purely the fact he played against Liverpool. Tomiyasu was a tactical decision, and so it's going to be interesting because if Tierney finds himself, full time down the pecking order in terms of behind Tomiyasu as well at left back, I mean, what does that say about Kieran Tierney and the situation he's in at Arsenal? So that's going to be really interesting to see who plays on Thursday night, because I can't imagine Zinchenko's going to play. We know he's struggling with injury. He wasn't in the squad. He's got a muscle problem. there's no way they're going to take him over on Thursday night and play him against Bodo. So it's going to have someone else at left back. And if it might well be Tomiyasu again, and that mean that Tierney will play at left back against Leeds. But if Tierney plays on Thursday night, you would think that probably means that Tomiyasu might well end up playing left back against Leeds. It's going to be interesting. But Cedric Soares is back fit, and I think this is definitely going to be the time we see Cedric make his first start of the season. I think he'll come in at right back. Rob Holden will be at centre back, and then it's just what do you do at centre back? Do you play Tomiyasu at centre back and then play Tierney at left back? That is an option, and then that means you can rest Saliba, Ben White and Gabriel all at once, because I think it's really important you find a way of resting Gabriel. Sort of further up the pitch, Martinelli, like I said, has started every single left game so far this season, running himself into the ground. He needs a rest. Reiss Nelson, for me, has to play on Thursday night. I thought he looked quite bright when he came on for the last 10 minutes, last 15 minutes, whatever it was in the game at Emirates last Thursday night. For me, I think you give Gabby a rest. He deserves it. You don't want to risk anything when it comes to Gabriel Martinelli. So you not run him into the ground so far this season, but he's been very, very overworked compared to everyone else. So for me, Reiss Nelson absolutely has to start on the left-hand side of the attack this time. And then obviously you've got Marquinhos, you can play Eddie Nketiah as central striker, you play Vieira behind them. For me, that's the front four that should play. So Marquinhos, Vieira, Nelson and Nketiah, and then it's what do you do in midfield? How do you find a way of resting Granit Xhaka? Because you've got to rest Granit Xhaka, surely you've got to rest him. He's so important. He started every game. A plastic, I know AstroTurf pitches now are very, very good. They're not like plastic pitches, but still it's going to take a little bit of extra strain on the joints. You just rest Granit Xhaka for this one. You've got to find a way of doing it. If that is a case of giving a youngster a run out, then for me, I think this is the game that you do that in. You bring in Sambi, we know he's going to start, but then who plays in that other role? For me, Matt Smith's there. He's on the bench at times. If he's there, then use him, give him a go. And I feel like this is the game to really do that. And you just got to give Granit a rest. I just don't want to see him. It'd be awful if Xhaka picked up an injury at the moment, and he's not as young as Martinelli, he's not as young as Gabriel, he's 30 now, which isn't old by any means, but still, the medical science behind it, the sports science, it feels like this is a game to give Granit a rest before that really crucial game against Leeds, because Arsenal, this run up now to the World Cup is just so important in the Premier League. Arsenal put themselves in this fabulous position. If they can just push on and keep this going until the World Cup, then who knows what can happen over the second half of the season. This patch of the season is so crucial, and Arsenal got to get as many points on the board as they possibly can. So as important as Europa League is, and it is important, make no mistake about that, the Premier League at the moment I just think is doubly as important as it normally is, because we just don't know what happens after the World Cup, and the position that Arsenal put themselves in now, they've got to take advantage. They've got to double down and make sure they get themselves through to the World Cup in a really strong position. So for me, Matt Smith, someone like that, really needs to be an option for this game on Thursday night for the first time this season. Granit Xhaka, you've got to give him a rest. It's time to let him put his feet up a little bit. Whether Mikel will remains to be seen. They're flying out on Wednesday. They've got the last training session tomorrow at London Colney. Then they fly out. They're doing a press conference at about 7:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow, where Mikel will be asked all these sort of questions. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be around to cover it. I'm not going to Norway, and tomorrow is my 10th wedding anniversary, so I'm out in the evening for dinner with my wife and my kids, having a bit of a celebration. So I'm not going to be able to cover the press conference, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll certainly be asked all the questions about exactly how you balance the squad, and those three players in particular, Gabriel, Xhaka and Martinelli, is going to be key to see. We're really interested to see exactly what Mikel does when it comes to those three players. Martinelli continues to be in the headlines in terms of his contract. Obviously, if you saw the video I put out yesterday, the story I put out on Goal, from the chat we had with him down in the mix zone after the Liverpool game, he talked about his future, he talked about how he wants to stay, and that contract talks are taking place right now. Lots of back pages about him at the moment. Some back pages saying he wants to double his wages, others saying he wants to triple his wages. He wants about 200,000 to be on parity with Arsenal's top earners. I mean, this is the position that Arsenal are going to now find themselves in, with this young squad with absolute young superstars in it. And I think this is the reason why Arsenal have been working so hard over the last couple of years to sort their wage bill out, to get a lot of the top earners out of the club, the older players out of the club, which just frees up space, because they know that these really important contract renewals are coming up. And Arsenal put such a lot of work into building this squad and revamping this squad and building it around this young, vibrant team with up-and-coming quality players, that it's just hugely important that they keep them and they continue to build, because you lose any of these sort of players at any stage and it's just one step forward, 2 steps back. So Arsenal are aware that they need to reward these young players with big contracts, and contracts that are more sort of comparable in terms of what they're worth and what they're delivering on the pitch, because the likes of Xhaka, the likes of Martinelli, they're not on huge money because of their age and because of the time they signed their last contract. And now their worth is just, we're seeing it every single week. We see how important they are to the team, and so they need to be rewarded as such for these contracts. They've all got contracts clauses in their deal at the moment. Martinelli, Xhaka and Saliba, they all run out in the summer of 2024, but Martinelli's got a 2-year option. Arsenal have a 2-year option on Martinelli to extend that. Arsenal have a 1-year option on Saliba to extend that. Arsenal have a 1-year option on Xhaka to extend that. But as nice as that sounds, the clubs don't really want to exercise those options, because it's almost taking the mickey out of the players at that point, because the players are like, hold on, because all you're doing with that option, you're extending the contract on the same terms by a further 2 years. You don't want to do that to Martinelli, because you're going to annoy him, you're going to wind him up, because he's going to be like, well, I'm one of your most important players and you're still paying me what you were paying me in 2020 by extending this option. So they know they need to be new contracts. They need to be revised terms more befitting how important they are to the team, rather than when they signed those contracts when they were young, up-and-coming players, and they weren't going to be on anywhere near as much money as some of the top earners at the club. So I think we're going to see lots of stories between now and whenever these contracts get signed, linking them with other clubs, talking about pay demands, all that sort of thing. It just comes with the territory. But, Arsenal are working hard to get all 3 of these players signed up to new contracts. As I said yesterday, the belief around the club from people that I've spoken to is that there is no concern, there's no worry, there's no rush. It's a case of, they know that these players need to be rewarded with new contracts, and they're working to get all of them done. And the club feel that all 3 of them want to stay at the club. And we've spoken to all of them recently. We spoke to Saliba not long ago. He said he wants to stay, he was happy, and he's spoken that before. He said that talks are ongoing. We spoke to Martinelli. He said he absolutely, of course, wants to stay. Bukayo Saka has spoken publicly about his desire to stay, and how he shares Mikel Arteta's optimism that a deal will be done very, very soon. So I think we've just all got to sort of calm down a little bit. Yes, we'd love to see the picture of them pen in hand signing their contracts sooner rather than later, because you just don't want any distraction, maybe is the right word, I don't know. It's just each week that goes by that they haven't signed, the questions are going to continue to get asked. So as Mikel said recently when he talked about Bukayo Saka, he said he wanted it done fairly quickly to avoid the distraction. And so the club are working towards that. Just got to wait and see now, and wait for an announcement hopefully to come on all 3 of them. Before I go on, the FA investigation that I spoke about yesterday, that continues to sort of progress at the moment. The FA have spoken to the players involved, spoken to Henderson, spoken to Xhaka, to sort of get their views on on exactly what happened, what was said. I believe there's going to be further discussions with other players who were sort of in and around the vicinity to get their views on what they said, what was heard. There's talk, I think it was Sky Sports I was watching the other day, earlier, and they said that the FA are looking to bring in lip readers to try and work out exactly what was said. The referees have obviously been consulted. They've filed their reports to the FA, and now the investigation is just going to continue before anything, if it does happen, if any charges are brought, any disciplinary proceedings are sort of officially started. We'll have to wait and see probably over the next few days whether that happens, and that all depends on all the evidence that the FA are amassing with the players who were involved, the players who are around it, who might have heard something, might have seen something, and that's the stage we're at with that with that investigation. So the FA are working towards it. I think it's probably going to be a few days before we find out anything definitive, whether disciplinary proceedings will be opened against a player, any players. That remains to be seen. So that's the latest on that. All right, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Appreciate your time as always. Do have a good rest of your Tuesday. I'll be back with some more of these videos as the week progresses, as we head towards Thursday night's Europa League clash in Norway. Have a good one. Speak to you soon.